Now, we've witnessed a massive amount of vibrancy within the fixed income markets in 2009 as investors took a flight to safety. What are the factors that are currently influencing that vibrancy?
First of all, we had automation of bonds trading late last year, which has put a lot of confidence in the market. We've seen bigger volumes beginning of this year, especially on the government bonds, which are far much liquid than the corporate bonds. So in this case, automation is one of the factors. And then we've seen a lot of cash inflow from foreign markets because they're taking bigger capital gains in our markets. And on the other hand, institutions are also very encouraging. They're getting into our market and they're making the market get very liquid at the same time.
Now, you've just talked about the automation, putting government bonds ahead of the curve. And just wondering, from the corporate side of things, how are they going to catch up, or how are they, competing with the government bonds?
Ever since, corporate bonds have always been very sluggish, especially when it comes to secondary market trading. This is mainly because they are mainly from the specific institutions. Government bonds are actually the government offloads, and government has to meet its budget deficit each and every month. And in this case, the capital need to be raised each and every month, and this makes it very, very viable. And unlike the corporate bonds, whereby maybe a corporate institution just need to meet a specific target, and at the end of the day, once that is met, they just use the initial capital to keep reinvesting on the specific project so targeted. Yeah.
Now, we've seen fixed income turnover rise significantly above the equities looking at 2009 and also the beginning of 2010. Do you see this outperforming the equities market?
Definitely, Chebet, it will. Because so far the turnovers we are seeing in the market are very huge. Today the market closed with a turnover of 3 billion, which is pretty impressive. And most papers which were traded today were actually some very long-term papers because they are a little bit volatile. And since these are bonds which were issued mainly in 2008 and 2009, most institutions, especially banks, are just taking profits and trying to forecast how the interest rate might continue moving.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now, with that growth we're currently seeing, are we likely to see diversification within the fixed income market? Rwanda, for instance, has a municipal bond. Last year we saw the government launch the first infrastructure bond. With the growth we're currently experiencing and the investor interest into the fixed income market, is this a likelihood as we get into 2010?
Yeah, I actually think it's a trend the government is making. To ease the burden on the government, they are trying to make each and every ministry responsible for its own, use of the funds so allocated. And that's why we saw the infrastructure bond launched late last year. And we also had another one, which was actually the initial bond, which was issued in February last year. So far, we have 2 infrastructure bonds. I suppose maybe in near future, we might see a municipal bond, which is actually very good, and it will do some wonderful work to our cities. And maybe, just maybe, we might see some maybe green bonds, given the fact that we are experiencing a lot of global warming and, all these things about global warming. I think the government should maybe think about issuing a green bond, which will assist in putting things together, planting trees, trying to ease pollution and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Now, early 2008, the government had planned to issue a Eurobond, a sovereign bond. The plans were shelved aside. This year, as we get into 2010, there have been reports that maybe the government will refloat the bond in 2010 or in 2011. Do you feel that the season is right for the government to do this?
I think Kenya is still a growing economy. I remember 2008 was the year when the bond was to be issued, but there were, global economic crisis, and that would have put Kenya on the edge, given the fact that the shilling back then was very weak. But I suppose maybe going forward, once the economy stabilizes and pricing of most commodities is all right, because we are still experiencing a lot of issues with inflation, inflation, the rates are still coming down. Though Kenya shilling is getting stronger, the government might want to have some stability first before considering issuing a sovereign bond.